is not good. Not good. Super excited to be back in Donegal. I haven't been here in a couple of months, although before I can get into any kind of thinking mode, I have to cut the grass. Don't judge me. Gardening clearly isn't my forte. We will have to ask first of all, before we start, what is digital transformation? For me, it's quite simple. Digital transformation is the deliberate practice of trying to strategically reposition one's organisation to make sure that it benefits from the digital economy. In 1965, Theodore Levitt wrote an HBR article in which he introduced the idea of product life cycles. The concept is simple. We start off at an introductory phase of a business. As the business tends to grow, so too do the profits. When it gets to this section, however, competition starts to increase, the market matures, and over time we then see decline. This all happens on a timeline of T. What we're seeing because of the new digital economy is that the T is shrinking, and the timeline from introduction to growth, maturity and decline is also increasing. The difficulty business leaders have is, are they able to create a business that is capable of going through these life cycles much quicker? Have they got the agility into their business? And this is a fundamental part of digital transformation. Businesses that fail to take Levitt's advice and understand how life cycles work typically get stuck in wishing the past back into the future. They think that if they wait around long enough, the world will change and meet them. And instead of creating more adaptable businesses, they end up just simply digitizing what they have and looking for operational efficiencies. So what happens if you don't digitally transform is that you get caught in that cycle whereby you keep looking for technology to help bail you out and gain that little extra squeeze of juice, that little extra piece of longevity. Reality is digitally transformed businesses, those that have legacies, those that have come from complex pasts, have to take full step change. It cannot be marginal gains. It only goes so far because of Levitt's collapsing timeline. Started my own business in 1999. It was going very well. It was an email marketing company. We sold software all over the world. Sold it into the big global accounts that you would expect, and we were charging a few $1,000s per month for the subscription service. No one was ever going to topple us. Then two things happened. One, marketers took over buying email marketing. Because remember, when we were doing this, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. It predated many of the outbound technologies there are today, except for text messaging. Marketers took over instead of technologists, and it moved to the cloud. Two things happened. That made it more affordable, effective and convenient. We said no one's ever going to go and move platforms because ours is much more sophisticated. They did. No one is ever going to reduce paying for us because they've got the trusted relationship. In about 18 months they did. And so the company nosedived. I then read a book by a guy called Professor Clay Christensen that had been recommended to me called The Innovators Dilemma. It's the seminal book that marks out what happens in businesses that transform, and it really predates digital transformation, but it still holds tight. And what Christensen wrote in his book was like me reading the obituary of my company. It had been preordained, something that we knew was going to happen. Had we read the book, we could have acted. But we don't. We think that when the curve of Levitt's curve is going up and growth is happening, we think it'll go on forever. We don't ever think that the product life cycle will dip. Dip it will, and dip quickly is what happens. When it does happen, it can be crushing, as I found out in 2007. Most digital transformation experts will tell us that you're dead if you don't digitally transform. It's not just that straightforward. While yes, we have to digitally transform in order to compete better in the digital economy, we're often told that the likes of Blockbuster were the testimony as to what happens when the business is overtaken by a new competitor like Netflix. As Greg Satell pointed out in his recent blog, actually Blockbuster were not asleep at the wheel. the senior leaders had actually spotted the Netflix trend, went to invest in it, realised that it was going to cost 400 million, couldn't raise the funds and couldn't convince the franchisees that they needed to change. It was a leadership challenge that no one would have been able to take on. If we take a look at Kodak, which everybody says was kind of like a business asleep at the wheel, and therefore it reached its inevitable death outcome, Kodak didn't make money from digital photography because nobody made money from digital photography. Maybe Facebook, as Satell points out. But you couldn't have got Kodak to go and start inventing a Facebook. The digital camera business would never have replaced the processing and film recorders that Kodak has so famously made its money from, resulting in its death in 2011. So it's not a matter that if we don't digitally transform, we're dead, and if we do digitally transform, we're saved. It is something more nuanced than that, where the senior leaders have to create organizations that have the capability to flex based upon new insights as they see them. And of course that's going to be powered by technology, but to mistake it as being technology is to be short-sighted. So, what are my conclusions? They're this. The timeline for business models is shrinking, principally due to the rapid adoption of technology and customer preferences changing. The business reaction is to try to squeeze more juice out of their existing business model in the hope that that will change and they'll be saved. Reality is that it most certainly won't. That transformation is needed, but transformation is difficult, nuanced. It requires, as the term transformation points out, it requires changes to business structures. It requires changes to the departments we have inside our business to be able to create new business models and experiment and to test and to fail and to get up and to change what it is that we're fundamentally going to do. It should be done in a structured way using evidence, data and feedback. And all of this while we're maintaining business as usual. The bigger the business, the harder it is, as we have seen in some of the examples. It's not an easy task, but it's definitely also not impossible, and it is definitely not simply something that the leadership should outsource to IT. The digital word may put you off. The transformation word should make you interested once again.